The day my husband looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're useless," I thought my life had officially hit rock bottom. He wasn't whispering it during an argument. He said it loudly in front of his parents, my parents, and our friends during a family dinner. Everyone laughed. Even worse, the very next morning, my boss overheard the story and laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "You? Running anything," he mocked. "You'd be lucky to keep a houseplant alive." 16 months later, that same boss stood frozen in the lobby of the company as security asked him to hand over his employee badge. Because I had just become the new owner. And my husband, well, let's just say calling me useless turned out to be the most expensive mistake either of them ever made. I never imagined my own family would agree with him. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. If my younger brother Ryan forgot to do his homework, I helped him. If he crashed Dad's car, I was somehow blamed for not stopping him. If money was tight, I gave up birthdays, vacations, and new clothes because my parents insisted Ryan needed support. Ryan was everyone's golden child. I was everyone's backup plan. I graduated at the top of my business program while working two jobs. Ryan dropped out twice. My parents celebrated him for finding himself. When I graduated with honors, Mom smiled politely. "We're proud of you," she said. Then she turned to Ryan. "So, have you thought about opening that sports bar?" It was always like that. No matter what I achieved, Ryan's unfinished dreams mattered more. Eventually, I stopped expecting fairness. I met my husband Daniel during my first office job. At first, he seemed different. He admired how hard I worked. "You inspire me," he'd tell me. "I've never met someone this determined." I believed him. We got married 3 years later. The compliments slowly disappeared. Then came the jokes. "You work too much. You take everything too seriously. You'll never be management." Whenever something went wrong at home, somehow it became my fault. If dinner was late, if you were more organized, if the washing machine broke, you probably overloaded it. If he forgot to pay bills, you should have reminded me. Little by little, he convinced everyone that I was simply not enough, including myself. At work, things weren't much better. I worked for a manufacturing company called Harrison Industrial. The owner, Richard Harrison, loved surrounding himself with loud, overconfident men who congratulated each other for doing the bare minimum. Meanwhile, I quietly fixed disasters. I'd catch accounting mistakes before audits. I'd negotiate with angry clients. I'd redesign failing processes. Every major project somehow succeeded because I stayed late. But promotions? Those went to people who played golf with Richard. One afternoon, my coworker Melissa whispered to me, "Do you realize half the company thinks you're already running this place?" I laughed. If that were true, I'd at least get paid for it. She shook her head. "No, they know you're the brains." I appreciated her confidence. Unfortunately, Richard didn't. After my husband's humiliating comment at dinner, I arrived at work exhausted. Richard noticed. "You look terrible." I forced a smile. "Just family stuff." "What happened?" I should have stayed quiet. Instead, I laughed awkwardly. My husband called me useless in front of everyone. Richard burst into laughter so loudly employees turned around. "No offense," he said, "but he's got confidence." Everyone nearby chuckled. Richard smirked. "You? Running anything? That's hilarious." Even Melissa looked uncomfortable. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I simply nodded, went back to my desk, and made myself one promise. Nobody would ever laugh at me again. A month later, the company landed its biggest contract in years. Richard assigned the project to his favorite manager. 3 weeks later, the entire deal was collapsing. Deadlines missed, budgets destroyed, clients furious. Richard stormed into the conference room. Someone fix this. Silence. Then everyone slowly looked at me. Richard sighed dramatically. Fine. I worked 16-hour days. I rebuilt schedules. Renegotiated supplier contracts. Recovered delayed shipments. Personally met every angry client. 6 weeks later, the project finished early. The client extended the contract. The company earned millions. During the celebration, Richard raised a glass. I'd like to thank our management team. My name wasn't mentioned once. Later, I approached him. Get to me, but I know that there's strict law. He shrugged. Don't get emotional. That hurt more than I expected. Meanwhile, things at home became unbearable. Daniel quit another job. He claimed the company didn't appreciate talent. So I paid every bill. Again. One evening, he tossed his bank card onto the table. I'm short this month. Again. You make decent money. I already cover everything. So? I've been working 60 hours every week. He rolled his eyes. You're acting like you're saving leaves. I stared at him. I barely sleep. So don't. Then came the sentence that ended our marriage. If you disappeared tomorrow, he said casually while scrolling his phone, nothing would really change. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. Something inside me simply stopped. The next morning, I quietly opened a separate bank account. I met with a lawyer and started planning my exit. That's when something unbelievable happened. Our company's founder, 82-year-old Charles Harrison, Richard's father, unexpectedly visited headquarters. Nobody had seen him in years. He quietly walked around the building introducing himself to employees. When he reached my department, he smiled. You must be Emma. I blinked. You know my name? I've heard it many times. Richard looked nervous. Very nervous. Charles spent hours asking me detailed questions. Operations. Budgets. Employees. Customer complaints. He listened carefully. Unlike his son. Before leaving, he shook my hand. Keep working hard. 3 days later, Richard called me into his office. His face looked pale. What exactly did you tell my father? The truth. You embarrassed me. I answered his questions. He leaned forward. If I find out you're trying to undermine me. I calmly interrupted. I'm too busy fixing your problems. His face turned bright red. I expected to be fired. Instead, 2 months passed. Nothing happened. Until one rainy Tuesday. Every employee received an email requesting attendance at an emergency company meeting. Richard walked confidently onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen. Before he continued, Charles Harrison entered with several lawyers. The room went silent. Charles spoke slowly. After reviewing this company's finances and leadership, Richard smiled confidently. I've decided it's time for major changes. Richard's smile disappeared. Charles continued. Effective immediately, Richard Harrison has been removed as CEO. Gasps echoed everywhere. Richard stood. What? You've been draining company resources. That's ridiculous. The evidence says otherwise. Richard looked around desperately. This is my company. Charles calmly replied. No. It's mine. Security approached. Richard, he shouted.
You can't do this.
Charles ignored him. Then he said something nobody expected. I've also completed negotiations to sell controlling ownership. Everyone looked confused. Charles smiled toward me.
The new majority owner is Emma Carter.
Silence. Complete silence. I actually thought he'd said someone else's name. Me? Charles walked over. You've been running this business unofficially for years. I whispered. I don't have that kind of money. He smiled. No.
But you had something far more valuable.
He revealed everything. Months earlier, he had quietly created an employee investment partnership. He invited several retired executives and investors who trusted his judgment. After watching me solve crisis after crisis, they agreed to back me completely. I would own controlling shares. Charles simply wanted someone competent leading the company instead of his son. Richard exploded.
This is because of her.
Charles looked disappointed. No.
This is because of you.
The room erupted in applause. Melissa hugged me. I couldn't stop shaking. I wasn't dreaming. I was actually becoming the owner. News spread across the city within hours. That's when my husband suddenly became supportive again. He arrived home holding flowers.
I always believed in you.
I laughed. No.
I was just stressed.
He knows no. We can start over. No. His smile faded.
I've changed.
I handed him divorce papers. You said nothing would change if I disappeared. I smiled gently. You were wrong. Everything changed. He begged. Actually begged. But I was finally done. My parents reacted even worse. Mom called crying. Poor family. I know. We're proud of you. Since when? Dad cleared his throat.
We may have underestimated you.
You think? Then Ryan interrupted. So, now that you're rich? I almost laughed. Don't even finish that sentence. Mom tried emotional guilt. Families help each other. I spent 35 years helping this family. Silence. You never noticed. A few weeks later came the final confrontation. Our town's business association hosted an awards dinner honoring local entrepreneurs. I was invited to receive an innovation award. Richard attended too. As an ordinary guest. Daniel also showed up, along with my parents. During my acceptance speech, I looked across the room. Every person who had ever called me useless was sitting there. I took a deep breath. I grew up believing hard work guaranteed respect. The audience listened carefully.
I later discovered something harder.
Sometimes the people closest to you benefit from convincing you that you're small. The room became silent. I was told I wasn't leadership material. I glanced at Richard. I was told I wasn't valuable. I looked at Daniel.
I was told my success didn't matter.
I smiled toward my parents.
But something wonderful happens when you stop asking people for permission to believe in yourself.
The audience stood. Applause thundered through the ballroom. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded me. One asked, "What motivated you to succeed?" I smiled. Being underestimated. Another reporter turned to Richard. "Any comment about your former employee becoming your boss?" His face turned bright red. No comment. Cameras captured everything. The interview went viral. Then came the biggest surprise of all. Several former employees contacted me. They had resigned because of Richard's leadership. They wanted to return. Within 6 months, we rebuilt the entire executive team. Profits increased. Employee satisfaction reached record highs. Turnover dropped dramatically. Clients who had left returned. The company became stronger than ever. One afternoon, I walked through the lobby and noticed a young receptionist nervously apologizing after making a small mistake. She looked terrified. I smiled. It's okay. She blinked. Really? We fix mistakes. We don't humiliate people. She nearly cried. At that moment, I realized something. Success wasn't owning the building. Success was creating the workplace I desperately needed years earlier. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel was struggling financially. Ryan had asked him for money. Ironically, the same way Ryan had always asked me. Life has a strange sense of humor. My parents eventually requested one final meeting. We met at a quiet cafe. Mon's eyes were red. We failed you. Dad nodded slowly. We kept waiting for Ryan to become responsible. And while doing that, Mom whispered, we forgot to appreciate the child who already was. For the first time in my life, they weren't making excuses. They were accepting responsibility. I forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Forgiveness didn't mean giving them another chance to control my life. It meant refusing to carry their mistakes forever. As for Richard, he eventually found another executive position. But everyone in the industry knew the story. The man who laughed at the woman he called incapable, only to lose his company to her. That reputation followed him everywhere. Sometimes karma doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives with paperwork. These days, I still work hard. I still arrive early. I still stay curious. The difference is that now I work for a future I chose. Whenever someone tells me they're being underestimated, I always give them the same advice. Don't waste your energy proving people wrong. Spend it proving yourself, right? Because one day, the people who laughed the loudest may find themselves standing in your lobby, waiting for permission to come inside. And trust me, there's no sweeter victory than realizing you no longer need their approval to keep walking forward.